Just a note before we begin our podcast, I had a few technical difficulties on this episode, so please bear with. They improve as the podcast goes along. Here we go. I'm Kay Bess, and this is the B-Hive. Women in voiceover, the voices of the fairer sex that keep the wheels of commerce and creativity moving in this country. Voices you hear every day, but names you likely don't know until now. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the B-Hive. My guest today is Carli Silver, who prior to heading up casting at Sound and Fury Voice Casting in New York City, was an agent with Atlas Talent for about a decade. She served in just about every department there, starting in promo, then moving over to commercials. She worked in the New York office for several years before coming out to the Los Angeles office and helping to establish the presence of Atlas, where she also worked primarily in commercials, but also in the gaming and animation department. So Carli brings just a wealth of fresh, interesting perspective to the voiceover biz from all her experience as an agent and also as a casting director. So get out pen and paper because there's a lot of wisdom here in this woman, and she is here to share it with us. Welcome to the B-Hive, Carli Silver. All the way on the East Coast. You're in Maryland right now, is that right?
I am right now, yes. Thanks for having me.
I'm super excited about this podcast because we have to sort of talk about how you got yourself into the world of voiceover as an agent, that's how Carli and I met. And now Carli is in casting for voiceover. So she has dear listeners, she has a wealth of perspective and experience to share with us about what the world of voiceover is like. So how did you end up at Atlas Talent in New York? How did that happen? And what were you doing before that?
Yeah, so when I graduated college, I went to college for acting.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I did. I got a BFA from Syracuse, and pretty quickly I was made aware that I was on the wrong side because my husband, who was then my boyfriend, he's a little bit older than me, and he is also an actor, and we met in the program. And he was out auditioning and doing it, and so I kind of got to see, the life that was ahead of me, and it was just, it's really different, I think, when you're in school and somebody is like, well, if you can do anything else, do it. And you're like, I can't. I'm going to do it. That's not my story. Yeah. And then, when you're out there and you kind of, get to see what the grind is and you have to see the heart that you need to really be there for the day-to-day, I think it's a different thing. And so I did a play right after school. All of this time, he had been auditioning, and I got a much clearer view of how the long term may look for me. I love the arts. I love entertainment, but I think I'm on the wrong side. And I really like the collaborating, the organization. I want to make sure I can do something every day. And I wasn't the actor that was motivated enough to create that for myself. And I've seen when watching my husband, I'm like, oh, he doesn't necessarily have to have an audition to go out and do something for himself and his career that day. That was not me. I needed a little bit more structure. And so then I turned and I was like, okay, so what does that mean for me? I started, working in all sorts of kind of different entertainment jobs. I worked at a management company. I worked at a film festival. I would just kind of talk to everybody that I could to try and figure out where I wanted to go. And I saw a posting for a part-time assistant at Atlas Talent. So as soon as I saw the posting, I thought, well, this would be something I'd be really interested in learning more about and diving into. I interviewed for a part-time assistant position in the promo department. And
who did you interview with? I'm so curious.
I distinctly remember interviewing with Heather and John coming into the office because I was John's assistant was my first position. And it's so funny because I remember in the interview, he sat down in a beanbag chair. And, if you know John, he's like so not the beanbag chair type of guy. He's so professional. But that's like a very distinct image I have of my interview, trying to kind of wrap my head around what this job was going to be. And, I will definitely say what I thought it was going to be and what it was, totally two different things. But I obviously fell in love with the voiceover world from it. So I'm glad I kind of went in blind and just went with the flow. I got the job, and my first week there was a shift, and the part-time job that I was going to be in ended up being that full-time assistant position to John. And so I was in promo and trailers for about a year. Then, I moved over into the commercial department. After that, that's kind of where my interests really were. And a position opened up in that department. And I loved commercials, and, I'm still working in commercials. That's my happy place in voiceover. So yeah, and then I worked in commercial for 7 years at Atlas, eventually going out to LA, doing the LA commercial market thing over there, and until I moved to casting.
Yeah. So I have to say, when, I don't know how long the LA office had been in Los Angeles by the time you came out to it, but it wasn't long. I mean, it was, a year or two?
I think that's right. When I moved out to LA, it was still a much smaller, it was a small space. I think there were 4 of us. And now it's, a full functioning office with multiple rooms and the whole thing.
Oh yeah.
I think
it's a production.
I think every couple months a wall got knocked down and another space was acquired while I was there.
As soon as another tenant leaves, it's like, knock down the wall.
Let me in. Yeah. We're sending more people out. It was really incredible. I mean, I'm so glad I got to have the agent experience as a casting director too. I feel like I have such a great perspective because I still feel like I can see the questions that are going to come through from the agency. And also, I work so closely with all of our talent. I felt so connected, and that I also feel like I'm still very much in tune with, what the talent need to get the job done. The whole piece to voiceover, which is so interesting, is that you only really are using your voice to come through the screen or come through the radio or pull in an audience. And you can't rely on your good looks or your facial, expressions. And
even the movement of your eyebrow. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can't.
And
can't do
it's
it.
just, it's so, I think it's such an interesting part of the entertainment industry because it's such a unique, special talent, I think, to be able to connect, without having not only that face-to-face, but that physical connection.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that you were, really instrumental in building the LA office and establishing some really key relationships in the Los Angeles area, for which, I know I speak for myself and several other people at the agency, that legacy of connection that you began is just, it's still part of things, and is really, I think, what makes Atlas just a kind of a special place. Mm-hmm. It's a scrappy agency that it's a can do. Yes. Say yes to it all, kind of go out and get the work, go out and get the clients, go out and build the base. And, you were so good at that. And that.
Thank you so much.
can't help but translate, into what you're doing now is casting. And while you were at Atlas, you got married while you were at Atlas, and you had a baby while you were at Atlas. And that's a piece of what sort of took you to the East Coast, if I'm not speaking out of turn, just that, being an agent with a young child is like, man, that's
oh my
insane.
gosh.
Yeah. So to be near family and, that's you're from the East Coast. And so that's a piece of, women in this business that we contend with, and how do we raise families and be there for our children and cultivate good marriages and relationships and all of that while trying to build a business and do good work. So I'm fascinated by that piece of it and the choices that you have made in order to do all the things that you want to do. I would just love for us to talk a little bit about what it is when you are when you're casting something, what it is that makes an audition stand out.
It's hard to exactly put my finger on, but it's just a level of groundedness and authenticity that comes through with certain auditions where I can just tell right away that the read is not being done for me or an audience. It just feels like this person is naturally wanting to say these words. And it's a comfort in the language and a simple confidence. I think confidence in life in general is so attractive, especially when it seems effortless. So that in voiceover is always so attractive when somebody can speak from a place of knowledge or experience and immediately want to go towards what they're saying. Of course, there are also voices that are just like, that voice is cool, that's awesome. Like, I love that texture or that tone. But with the reads that really always get me, it almost feels like the artist wrote their own rules. Like that person looked at the script, read the script, thought, okay, in what world do I feel positive about saying these words? And let me put myself in that scenario and begin from there. I think people take for granted how much gets picked up in the voice. And so if you are actually in that moment, if you're actually connected to what you're saying, if you're actually feeling happy when you say something, that's going to come through way more than a manufactured anything. It cuts through.
It's an interesting thing to do workshops and teach aspiring voice actors, because we talk about how acting experience is such an integral part of being a good voice actor, especially when it comes to animation and video gaming and at the same time, I encounter many people who they are overacting, especially in TV spots where you kind of have to remind them and give them perspective. There's a picture, there's a picture that's telling the story, and there's music that is pulling on your heartstrings in one way or another. So I, as the voice actor, I don't have to do those things because they are happening. And so I'm just required to sort of validate what is going on screen, because we all know that you can turn the sound down and you can get the gist of a commercial. You can get what they're trying to sell you, or, the feeling that is trying to be evoked, or you can have a picture and music and there is no VO and it's a perfectly viable, commercial that sells product. So it's very interesting to have to get people to trust that if they place themselves in the scenario, if they really utilize their imagination, what are they responding to with this line? But I find it fascinating that the inclination is to go way over the top with new students,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think one thing to do as an exercise is like, whenever you're questioning if you're going over the top, it's like, talk about something you really love. Talk about something you're really passionate about. See how you express yourself in that way. I mean, I know if when somebody talks to me about my son, it's like, we'll tell a story and there's just there's a joy that comes through.
Already I can hear the smile in your voice. I can hear it already.
Thinking about him, it fills me in a way that will come through, but never would I say, oh, it's just the joy. Like that's
The joy of having children.
Like that's just not
right.
going to happen in my real day-to-day life. And I think, sometimes in trying to create those moments, you forget those moments are in us. Like it's going to come out.
Yes.
Like your audience is smart. Like they're human too. Just be you and we'll get that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so true. Those experiences are in us. That is absolutely right. They don't have to be manufactured or put on like a robe,
Right.
Yeah. It's,
Right.
That's very, very true. I think if you have listened to the podcast enough that you know that I'm sort of fascinated by the trials and tribulations of people's lives and how, and certainly, and this being married to an actor, the sort of roller coaster ride that we go on. I think that's a human thing. I think it's sort of, it's a little exacerbated by the experience of actors just because work is so unsure all the time. But I do think it's just basically a human experience that we, things happen in our lives that we think that we weren't expecting or take us by surprise or, just those pivotal moments. And oftentimes they're experienced as difficulties. They certainly can be like, well, I was just offered a fantastic job, but it takes me out of the country. I mean, that's a very positive thing, but it brings with it choices to be made about where you are and all that kind of stuff. I'm just curious about any experience that you might have had that was just really kind of pivotal in pointing you in the direction that you ended up walking, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I would be curious to know.
For sure, having my son changed my whole perspective on life and priorities and time and all of that. And I loved being an agent. Like it was one of those things that was very difficult for me to walk away from because I did work with such incredible actors and coworkers and, it had been my home for 8 years.
Yeah,
so
it's a long time.
I was like, there was definitely a point in my life where I thought, this is the path that I'm on. Always while I was an agent, my favorite part of the process, in a sense, the casting process, when we would run auditions and go through reads and work in the booth, that was always something that really just lit me up. And I knew that I had the casting bug, but I felt like, I'm getting that fulfillment here. A great agent really knows how to listen to the talent like a casting director and knows what their actor can do and pull different things out of them and put them out there for the right jobs. I mean, I think that it felt like a very seamless transition for me in that sense because it was a much larger scale, obviously moving into casting, but it was something that I felt like I was practicing on a daily basis even as an agent. I was connected to Jill, who I work with now at Sound and Fury. Before, when I was an agent, we worked together. She was the casting director and I was the agent, and we developed a strong friendship outside of the office too. We were always, invested in each other's lives. So it wasn't a foreign thought to me. But when I had my son, it was almost like I knew I couldn't be the same agent that I could be before. The way that I agented, especially, I think some people have a better way of disconnecting than I did. When I work at anything, I go in so full. And I think that's a really great aspect. I mean, a great trait that I have. But it also means that sometimes I would stay later than I would have to.
Right.
Or, I wouldn't create a boundary because, it's not even that I would want to. It's like I want to keep doing this. I want to stay on the phone. I want to do these things. And I just didn't have enough left in my tank. And so all of the stuff that goes outside of the day-to-day work of agenting, like all the personal relationships, I was like, I love this. This is, a big piece of why I'm here, but I need this time back at home. So that was number one. And then all of a sudden, LA, this place that I loved and was, my home, I looked around and I thought, I was 6 months old. I have an event tonight. I can get a babysitter for him, but that was really kind of my only option. I didn't have like, oh, I could call my mom, I could call my aunt. I didn't really have that network of support that I so desperately wanted. And then my mom would like come out and she'd be with him, and I'd just watch their interaction together, and I'd see him light up in a way that, I think you can only get from being with people like family, that just like, they love you instantaneously. And I wanted that for him too. And so it was very clear to me I needed to find a way to make more space in my life for family and for that time and connection. It just so happened it coincided with this opportunity from Jill, who, was kind of, it was amazing because we were friends throughout all this. And she, I think we always were like, oh, it'd be so great to work together. But it was, I think she saw that moment where she was like, this is something, I would love for my life, and I would think would be really great for your life too. And it just, I was very fortunate that it worked. Yeah. And she was like, yeah, come on over. Let's do this. And I will say it's, I still have those same characteristics, so that I still will sometimes be up working at midnight and being like, well, I still probably need to find my boundaries for myself. But, it's in a way now that is so much more manageable for my life, and has allowed me to really be connected to my family again and to my son. And we're actually pregnant with our second right now.
Oh my
God,
and so excited for you, Carli. Oh, wow. This is like, okay, big surprise. Big podcast announcement here. Stork.
Yeah. You've heard it before Facebook.
Wow, that is so awesome. That is so awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited about it. But and I do feel like it's been made possible because I now have a different outlook on it too after going through that experience. If you make those changes in your life, if you take those chances that are fearful, that you feel fearful of sometimes, you will come through it. You'll find your way. There's so much security in what I left. And I feel secure now, but in that transition process, I
don't
felt
at all.
this. You don't at all, and you're just like, what am I doing? But it was, I think
the nature of change, right?
Yeah. Exactly, and I think that's in so many things in life. If you feel uncomfortable with something, or you feel, you want to change, it's like you can overthink things, a million times over. But it's just like you have to have that trust in yourself. And I think in your career too, like I can definitely say that too with like watching my husband, and he's gone through those times too where it's like, is this the right choice? Should we make this change? Is this what we want? You have to just go forward and keep moving forward and do what's best for your life, and
don't you think
good will come from it.
I listened to what you're, talking about and the choices that you made and why you made them. And I feel like it is evidence of the fact that you're making choices based on your values, what you value. I think that ultimately means that no matter what the difficulty is, that when you base a decision on what you value, that it's the right one. It's the right path. Because we're going to have ups and downs no matter what path we choose. Mm-hmm. But if you sort of end up making a decision and you go, oh, wow, this doesn't fit right with who I am, with what I believe in, with what I value, then that's the real gnarly turmoil,
Yes,
that's super hard to turn back from, so I think that sort of knowing who you are, knowing what you love, knowing what you value, and making decisions from there is like, doesn't mean that they're easy. It just means that they make more sense. That's pretty cool. That's great. Oh, I'm like still on this news that you are preggers. It is just so great. It is so great.
Thank you so much.
Tell me what it is that you love most about your job.
It's so funny because I was going to say I mean, I love listening to the different ways that a single line can be interpreted. You can say, like, you can say friendly, textured voice, give me a simple line, and just hear so many different ways that resonates with people. There's so many strong, incredible options that I hear on a day-to-day basis that I'm just like, yeah, it's exciting and invigorating to hear the diversity in the spirits all around us. It's like there's we all have our own voice. Not even just, vocally. It's like everybody says things and it rings true to them so differently. That's like the thing I think I like the most about it is,
everyone's
sometimes something
uniqueness. Yeah.
Absolutely. Sometimes something will strike me and that I'm just like, oh, wow, that's like not at all how I initially would break up the script in my head. And I'm like, I love that. I love that, that person just sees that differently. But I will say I was watching TV yesterday and there were a couple commercials that a cast that played and two of them were back to back. And that was awesome.
That's
and
exciting.
That was just a really nice moment, to pause the TV and, be like, hey, that was it. That was the final outcome. That's always really fun to see.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
I'm sure it's
cool.
like the same for you guys. It's like, that's me, It's,
yeah, it's so true. And if
pride there.
If you have something that runs on Super Bowl Sunday or, some sort of big event day where the commercials are, I mean, I can't think of another day that's sort of as big as that, right? Because we all so look forward to seeing the commercials on Super Bowl Sunday. So, it's like if you have one of those in your career, it's like, well, I did that, so that is pretty cool. And, and the first time you hear yourself in a commercial is always fascinating. Like, I think that's
sure.
me. That's
it
totally.
Must be.
Yeah,
I mean, because
totally
I get so excited. I'll even still sometimes like pause and rewatch a commercial that I spent days casting and. It's like, I've heard it a million times, but, just getting to see it, like, I'll watch it a couple, every time it comes out, I'm like, oh, there it is again, and I'm not in it. So I can't even imagine if that was, something where I was like, that's me, that must be an incredible thing too.
It's weird when you hear yourself and you go, oh, wow, I read for that. And then you like, oh, and then you go, oh, I booked that. I mean, that's me. That I've had that happen before. And it was just so weird. Like I didn't even recognize myself on a radio spot. It was just like, wow, okay. Gosh. Like, are you, what? That's crazy that you didn't recognize your own voice.
Once everything is mixed, it can have like a totally different feel. And, like for us, we're not in the actual final session most of the time.
Right.
And so, the script may change a little bit or they direct it in a little bit of a different way. And so it's really fun to kind of be like, oh, that's where it landed.
That's right. Yeah. That's where it landed. It's so funny. I mean, one of my pals and my voiceover pals, Sissy Jones always talks about, she talks about how the audition is so often not what actually works. You may book it based on an audition that they liked, but then you get in the studio and that's not what ends up being, the direction that they take it. And so, you shouldn't ever be surprised if you read for something, you don't book it, you hear it and you go, oh, that's what they were going for? Because they were going for one thing in an audition, and they end up somewhere else, so which always leads you to just be you, just do you,
Absolutely.
Do what you do.
That also that to that point, it encourages me to say, and don't hear the spot and say, well, that's what they wanted. So when I see that direction, that must mean that's what they wanted because there were probably, 4 steps in the middle where it changed and they did want what they asked for.
Initially,
but then they overwrote the copy and they need to make it a lot quicker or, that client wanted it brighter.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I would say like, and now the client is in the room and they go, you need to billboard the product name a little more, when the direction initially is don't oversell.
Don't hit it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just an interesting dynamic. So if you put your former agent hat on, there's always someone in my world who is looking for representation. And they're looking to perhaps move from a smaller market, to they've moved to Los Angeles and they sort of want to play in the, air quotes, big leagues. And how does a person get their demo to the ears of an agent? And how does an agent make a determination about whether or not they're going to take a chance on somebody?
I think part of it, a big part of it, unfortunately, the talent doesn't know, which is, what is that agent needing on their roster at that moment? What are they looking for? I mean, there were so many times where it just so happened we would just have a meeting and say, you know what, I think we could really use somebody that is in their 40s, a gravelly kind of guy, down to earth, or dad type. Like it would be just every once in a blue moon, we would have that meeting and be like, we're missing this. And then that's where our ears were going towards. And if it just so happened that your demo came in at that time and you fit in that kind of spec that we were looking for, you had a much better shot. Whereas maybe a couple months before, we were like, that category is just not something we're looking to expand unless you are just hitting it out of the park and we need to have you now. So there's there's definitely that piece to it. You just have to, hope that is something that they need at that time. So part of it is luck, I do think. I think another piece is if you know somebody at the agency that could vouch for you, that's always that's always really, obviously that favor has to, you can't, all your friends can't come and say, "Kay, get us in," but for there are the few, that come through that just need that extra listen. And if you have that connection, that's a great way to do it. Also, anytime we ever were recommended anyone from somebody that we trusted, a coach, a casting director. That was always helpful, because also whenever it was somebody who was recommended by a coach or had coached with somebody that we knew was a really tough person or had a great ear, we knew that was somebody that was constantly working on their craft. I think it's very easy to feel all right, I've learned it, I've arrived.
I have a demo now. And I
have a demo. Yes, I have my mic. I've got my demo. Now just sign me. And I think the people that we were always really drawn to were people who kept trying to meet people and put themselves out there and learn something new and continue to learn. Because, as an agent, your job is to create opportunities and make sure that your talent are being heard. At the end of the day, it's, really on the talent to book the job. So anytime we saw somebody who had as much drive to get that opportunity as we did, that was always really appealing to us. So that was definitely something that we looked for. Yeah. And I think having a great demo is important. I only listen to demos that were emailed. I don't even know if people really mail them anymore. Every now and then I would still get a CD or a thumb drive. But anytime it was emailed to me, I would listen. I don't know if that's the case with every agent. And usually what I would do is I would star it until a certain point of the week where I had some time and I'd go through it. But it was one of those things in the first spot I could usually tell. So I definitely encourage everybody to make sure that first spot is really indicative of who you are and what you do. It was, it's different obviously with animation and video games where you're showcasing all these different characters. But I think with commercial, you're not looking for a million different voices. You're really looking for somebody who knows themselves and how to maneuver the different aspects of themselves to give different reads. Oh, that's such a good point. I hope people are, really take note of that, because the whole notion of a commercial demo, showing your range is as not the spot for it. It's the, a commercial demo, it seems to me, is where you show your essence, who you are, who you can faithfully, be relied on, to be at a session. And animation work, and, that's a different game. That's range. Absolutely. Right.
And that's, the essence of that is your sense of creativity, and So I think that's so crucial. I went to a workshop at Marilyn Wisner's for video gaming when I was, starting to like, what is this? And I need to get inside of this and figure out what it is. And, it was really quite foreign to me. And I remember, and I'm sort of like, I'm always the oldest person. I shouldn't say that. I was like, always the oldest person there, but that isn't true. I want to say I'm among the most experienced voice actors who are in the room, right? Like, I think that's probably a realistic thing to say, but there certainly are people who are older than me. But that's
a hats off to you, Kay. Because you do have the credits, do have the experience, so good for you. Keep going. That's exactly what I'm talking about. That's what people look for.
Well, and I just really wanted to get to know it, and I felt like I'm gonna, if I have an opportunity to go to a workshop with Andrea Toyas, from Blizzard, right. I should take that. What is she like? How do these directors work? And it's just information gathering, right? So anyway,
Absolutely.
there was a kid there, Max Middleman.
I know Max. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. I think everybody now knows Max. But,
right.
He was like this. This was like 4 years ago, I want to say, and where he was really just starting, but it was so clear, like his innate talent and his understanding. It was like in his blood, And so here's a guy who you look at and go, okay, he has a lot of raw talent, and it's talent that over the course of years will be shaped and guided, and and that shaping comes with the opportunities that agents bring. And then stepping up to the opportunity, right? So my question is attached to this notion of young voice actors who have some raw talent. Do you perceive that agents still do a kind of grooming, if you will, of like, here's somebody who's young, inexperienced, but has such talent that we're gonna take that person on because we see a future there, not necessarily like he has this body of work, right? Right.
Yes. Yes.
But I'm just curious what that's like and how often that kind of thing happens.
I think that happens all the time. Especially for young voices. I think that's more common than not. When you're young and you're starting out, I think agents don't necessarily expect you to have been a child actor and have all of the tools in your belt, and they're there to guide you. And then I think there's a change when you get a little older, because then I think there's a different tier, which is like the older actor that has all of these amazing qualities and tricks up their sleeve, but maybe they haven't had the opportunities to really access all of them. And so I think there's there's two tiers. I know we definitely at Atlas, it was like we really liked signing people who we felt were underutilized. Because it was
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that? You liked signing people.
We liked signing people who we felt were underutilized, who could do so much, but maybe had limited opportunities. Like maybe they were only getting video games, but we're like, oh, you could definitely do animation or commercial. You've got you've got a really interesting quality about you in this aspect. I think that viewpoint is taken by a lot of people for younger talent. Overall, it's like, oh, there's so much more we can go further with from here. So I absolutely think that's the way that that agents are looking at it.
Yeah, it's I often think in my head of drawing these parallels between the voiceover business, or the acting business, and the music business, and how in the music business, in the 70s in particular, and before, but I think that in the 70s were sort of a heyday of it, that record labels would take on pretty raw talent and really groom them and give them an opportunity to grow as artists, and build a following, whereas, music in 2017 is sort of like, well, how many Twitter followers do you have? And, if you've got 50,000, we might take a chance on you, or if you've got 1 million, or we'll sign you, and if your first record isn't a gold record or a platinum record, you're dropped, and that's it, And so I've always been curious about whether or not that sort of thinking has, occurs in voiceover land.
Maybe I think at a certain age it does. I think at a certain age, then I think agents go, okay, why aren't you at that point in your career where we might help? If the answer is that you could be, you haven't really been able to audition for those projects, well, then that's one reason. But it may be that you need to keep working on your read. It may be that you're reading on an old trend, and you need to keep up to date with kind of what's going on and what's casting out there. And I think that question does come into play, but I think it's not until, unfortunately, I don't want it to sound like ageist, but I do think it is at a certain age where you're like, okay, I think it's like, with anything, when you're in your 30s applying for a job, they want to see a certain number of years of experience.
Sure.
And, so I think it's similar in that way. It can be different because, sometimes also, it's not always voiceover career, vets that people are signing nowadays. Like you were saying, like YouTube stars and all of that kind of thing, and musicians. Right. And I do think voiceover has opened up to different types of people. I know a lot of castings. I'm looking for comedians. I'm looking for poets. I'm looking for people who have different worldly experiences. So I do think agents are key to that too. So.
Sure. Yeah.
So I think, that also kind of opens it up. If you are newer to voiceover and you're older, what life experiences and have you done improv? Have you, those kind of things can be ways in, and something different that you offer, some life experience, that if you haven't been behind the mic for 20 years.
Yeah, it's
sometimes
funny.
it's
go
hard.
Ahead,
sometimes like being behind a mic for 20 years, it's like that's the thing that gets you in because you have all this body of work. But then so many things. It's like they don't want you to sound like you've done voiceover. So it's like having that raw feel is what's going to help you book the job. So it's a catch-22 in a way.
Yeah, and also it seems to me, to sort of address this notion of ageism, I think what's really at issue is not age. It's really whether or not you've remained malleable. Whether you've maintained a suppleness in your ability to stay with trends, or even to know, frankly, whether or not there's a particular trend that you should sit out, because it's not you.
You're right.
You can't be authentic doing it. So
Definitely.
where should you direct your energy while that whole thing is going on?
Definitely.
And really taking a look at the broader, the broader arena, of voiceover, because there are so many different areas. And so if you've been in it for a while, are you taking the clues, why am I not, you ask yourself the question, why am I not booking commercials? And the number one thing you ask is my read good? As opposed to, why aren't my agents sending me copy? Well, if your agents aren't sending you copy for something, maybe it's because your reads are not competitive in that area, or, but I think ultimately an actor has to look to anything that he or she has power over, can actually change, right? Can actually work on and improve, right? So,
absolutely.
We all know people in their 50s, 60s, 70s who are working certainly in animation and gaming and, in commercial work. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think the ageism, the hurdle is really in getting assigned with an agent if you don't have one.
Yes,
I think as far as like once you have the agent, there's work 100%. I have cast 8-year-old to 70 plus, there is work for everybody out there at every age, national commercials. So yeah, I think you're 100% right. I think if you are older and you're staying on trend, then you're ahead of the pack. That's what I'm saying. Like you're going out and you're still studying, you're still taking classes, you're still making sure your reads are where they need to be. Like that's there's a reason when you look around that there's not a ton of people that are as seasoned as you are that are there. And that really gets you to a different level of expertise when you're auditioning at home, because you have to realize that you're not everybody that, is already a pro is doing that. And so like, that's actually, if you have that drive to do it, you're narrowing the gap.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think willingness, right? A willingness to be really sort of brutally honest with yourself about what you sound like, and enlisting the assistance of people who have their finger on the pulse of trends and saying, I think that this read that I'm giving is very non-announcery, and it is very natural. What do you think? And if somebody comes back and goes, that was sort of the real natural understated of the 1990s. Like, it was different then than it is now. So, but you have to be willing to do some serious self-examination and not get kind of stuck in your pride and your ego and your sense of, well, I worked 20 years ago and I was the bomb then. Like, what's going on now, And
I think the other side of it too is to also not get discouraged if you are getting there and you are doing those reads and you are feeling like, hey, I'm putting my best self out there, and it may not book right away. I can't tell you how many fantastic actors there are. There's so many, as a casting director, our job is to give the client different options. So, when I'm pulling out the best options for someone, I try not to give them all the same type of voice, all the same type of read. So, I'll have a casting link and I'll say, any one of these people could book it. Who I might have gone with, it may be very different than who the producer goes with, maybe very different than who the client goes with. Even just like sometimes Jill and I will tag team on a project because we'll hear different things. And so you might be doing that read. You might be nailing it. And it just so happens it didn't go your way that time. I think that's something that's sometimes hard to swallow. You're like, oh man, why? Well, it didn't, it didn't happen this time, and it's not, it wasn't because of your read, or, it wasn't something that you could control. They ended up just deciding to go with something more textured or something clearer, or a little higher, but
the talent is certainly, the talent on that short list is making an impression with you, the casting director, and even with the people who, even with the clients,
absolutely.
And so to remember that, every great audition is memorable and is important, and may lead to a job way further down the line that you're not even cognizant. And it's just finally like, what, we've listened to this person. They're fantastic. This time it's their number,
I think that's so true. There are so many people I'm such fans of, and they have no idea. It's like you don't know necessarily, and because you're at home and your mic, and you just have to continually do your best work. There are so many auditions, and I know, for us, we audition tons of people. There's so many names and people that we're auditioning. But I remember distinctly, I wouldn't say every single audition, but it's amazing what does stick with you. I can reference things that I cast, a year ago, and opinions that I may have cultivated. Oh, he does actually a really good storyteller read. I really liked him on this project, and I'll bring that memory back into a current casting I'm doing. I definitely have requested people based off of previous auditions.
Yeah. I really try to look at things like, I'm such a newbie to gaming and to animation, but I look at things like, getting a call back, for an animation thing, or having a requested animation audition.
Yeah.
I kind of go, okay, I'm making progress. I'm actually, there's movement here, and it matters,
Absolutely.
and, I didn't book those things, but I feel like I made enough of an impression for them to go, I want to hear that again.
Yeah.
And that's
a win.
Yeah, it's a win. It's a win. It's not a paycheck, but it's a win,
Yeah.
So all of those things matter. And I know, voice actors we have to keep reminding ourselves of those things because we don't get feedback. Nobody calls us and says, you know what, you were second in line for that, good on you. I mean, sometimes, an agent might say, you know what, it's between two of you and they're deciding and, and then you get the word that you didn't book it. So you were second in line. I mean but we tend to take that on as like, oh, I lost a job, when really it should be like, well, no, that's great. That's progress, and that's good.
Absolutely. And how many people had to go, I love this read, for you to be second in line? I mean, there are a lot of people involved in it's a process. It's not just, usually one person. So those are multiple fans you're making along the way.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. That's a cool way to look at it. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, we are coming near the end, and I want to play B-Hive roulette with you.
Great.
So
let's do it.
Yeah. So this is I have a roulette wheel now. So I'm actually going to spin it. I'm going to spin it just for the sound effects because you are, of course, all the way across the country. So I'm going to spin it for sound effects, and then you just choose a number between 1 and 50, and we'll do this 10 times.
Okay.
And you'll have, and we'll get to know Carli Silver just a little bit better. Okay. So here I go. I'm about to spin. All right.
33.
What's your favorite type of food?
Dessert.
That is so great. I love
Is that a pregnant answer?
I love that. You know what? I was talking to Melanie Minakino, and she was talking about actually going to a restaurant with you to get a pregnancy salad. And I was like, what is a pregnancy salad?
It's in the valley. I went into labor a day after I ate it.
Is it actually known as that, or did you coin it?
No, it's called the pregnancy salad. When you go there, you sign, they have a book if you're pregnant, and you write your name, and you can write a little message, and you write your due date. And then a lot of people go back and they'll like follow up, and they'll be like, I delivered. Or I think the key is it's a lot of balsamic.
That is so funny.
It's called the pregnancy salad, and it's
that is so funny. Well, she didn't mention you by name, but I knew. She goes, I went and had lunch to have the pregnancy salad with my agent, and I'm like, oh, you went with Carli. I know that.
Yeah.
So funny.
Yeah.
Here's number 2.
All right. Do number 8.
Do you have a journal?
I don't. I'm one of those people who have bought many journals, and
every guest that I ask this question.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's such a great thing. I wish I would do it. And I bought one that even like prompts you to write down like one simple thing a day. Somebody was like, oh, do that when you have your first kid. Just write down something once every day. And I was like, definitely. No, I don't know.
No, it didn't happen. Yeah. No. I have 10 journals that all have half a paragraph.
At least, you know what? But I'm sure it's good to go back and read them. That's so fun.
Yeah. Compile them. All right. What's your number?
42.
What's your favorite cocktail?
My favorite cocktail, well, my go-to drink that I order is a Dirty Shirley, which is
What's a Dirty Shirley?
It's a Shirley Temple with vodka.
Oh, I love that.
We really can't screw it up, which is basically an alcoholic dessert.
Well, there you go. No wonder it's your favorite. It's your favorite drink. You know, my daughter had this. It just reminded me that years ago, I can't remember where she got it. It was like a rummage sale or something. She was only 2 or 3, and she got this creepy doll with a broken eye.
Gosh.
My gosh. I don't know. Oh, she named it. She named this doll Curly Shirley. It had like curly hair. It was so creepy. So now I think of Curly Shirley drinking a Dirty Shirley.
Oh, you're a good mom for letting her buy that.
Oh, it was just so gross. I think she just got it free. Like, oh, here, take the doll. I'm like, oh my God, please,
sure.
Please don't take the doll. But okay, next.
Let's do 28.
Who was the last person you talked to on the phone?
It was my dad.
Oh, that's so nice.
36.
What is the last movie you saw at a theater?
Oh my gosh, this is a real test. It was Beauty and the Beast.
Seriously?
The recent one, the live action.
Oh, okay. I'm like, wow. Okay, Carly, wow.
I think I've seen 3 movies in the theater since my son has been born. So it's 2 years, 3 movies. And when I was pregnant, I went to the movies every single week that I was pregnant because I knew it was going to be harder after. I miss it a lot.
Yeah. All right.
13.
How many push-ups can you do?
I can do 50.
Really?
Before I got pregnant with my second, I really wanted to lose all of my baby weight from my first. And I started getting to be a gym rat, and I started going 5 to 6 days a week, and I got really strong. And push-ups happened to be like one of the things I could do really well.
That is awesome.
I don't know if I could do 50 actually now. I don't know that like my belly would let me go down that far, but on my knees I could probably do 50.
Yeah. Oh, that's so great.
It was good. It was great. It was a good experience getting physically fit again.
Yes, I totally agree. I did the same thing this year. Like I got really strong. Okay, next.
Number 6.
Are you more like your mother or like your father?
I am almost identical to my mother. It's almost identical in our looks, in our speech. It is freaky.
Oh, wow. That would be so cool.
It's really, we say things at the same time all the time. It's really creepy.
That's so funny. So I'm like, my spins are getting really serious here.
I love it. I feel like we're playing bingo.
I know. Okay.
50.
Name something most people don't know about you.
I was an all-American cheerleader.
Oh, that's so great. Okay.
39.
Summer, winter, spring, or fall?
Fall. I love fall.
Right on. All right. The last question is for me to ask you.
Okay.
And it is, if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say to you when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Oh, we have some of your friends waiting for you.
Ah, sweet. Very nice.
Yeah.
Excellent. Carli Fitzgerald Silver. Thank you so much for being a guest.
Thank you so much for having me, Kay. It was so nice.
I'm so glad. It's just such great information and perspective. I knew you would just be the best. It's just so great.
Thank you so much.
I have to just say also that I know this is probably, it's a little too much about me, but I just want to say Carli was so instrumental in helping me to break the barrier of games and animation. I mean, I think about that Skylanders audition that, you sent back to me and said, you just need to tweak it a little more this direction. And, and which I ended up booking and just instilling so much confidence in me that I could do these things and that I was on the right path. And I will just forever be grateful to you for that. I just,
thank you so much,
super,
Kay.
super grateful. So
I very much remember that moment. And I just have to say, and if anyone else hears this too, it's like, and they're out there, your willingness to ask and to listen. I loved working with you. It was that collaboration that I was looking for all along, It's like that connection.
Exactly.
It was special, and I have such fond memories of working with you.
Thank you. I just extend that whole notion of collaboration and working with a director, on a game. I mean, you realize how vital their input is in the creation of your character and how they help with consistency and, really having a through line for a character that you work on for a couple of years sometimes. And, just really solidifying the whole notion of that voiceover is collaborative and it is from start to finish. We can't do this, without each other. So
absolutely.
So with that, you are at the Sound and Fury, is that right?
Sound and Fury casting, yes.
Sound and Fury casting. Excellent. Thank you again for being here, and it was just great to have you. Thanks for joining me today in the B-Hive. For podcast notes, pictures, and more information on my guests, visit the podcast website, thebeehivepodcast.com. Find me at my website, kbess.com. Follow me on Twitter at kbess. And subscribe to my channel on YouTube. If you've a mind to, please post a review of the podcast on iTunes. Kind words are like honey, sweet to the soul and good for the bones. Come back for more Women in Voiceover next time in the B-Hive.